This particular Lenten lectionary cycle takes us on a journey through the major covenants in the Bible. A covenant is essentially a formalized relationship or agreement between two parties. Some covenants are conditional. God graciously offers to do such and such upon the condition of God's leader or people responding in a certain way. Other covenants are unconditional. God promises to do such and such without any stipulations. What's unusual about the covenant today in Genesis 9 is that it's totally one-sided. It's all God's action and promise with no expectation other than to live under God's blessing. The scope of the so-called covenant with Noah is the promise to the whole creation. So let's explore this first covenant in greater depth today. Do you ever watch the news and reach the saturation point where you cannot take in all the violence, destruction, division, and decay? There's never been a time like this in history when so many people can find out so much instant information about the aching world. What do we do at that saturation point? We can turn off the television or computer and try to take our mind off the news. We can pursue the work of ordering the small part of the world we think we can control. But you know, God does not have that option. God does not have a remote control to channel surf the concerns in the world. God cannot move out to the exurbs or close a door to hide from the violence and disease. God's eyes are not distracted. God's heart does not grow numb. We see only the thinnest slice of sin and struggle and want to despair, but God sees it all. If Noah's age was anything like our own, no wonder God said, "That's it, time's up. I've seen enough. Let's flush it all down the drain with a flood and start over." For some reason, God set aside Noah and his family of 8 to survive the royal flush, so to speak. We do not know much about the character of Noah and his sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, and their respective wives. God seemed to think that they might form the core of a new beginning in God's world. The children's songs take care of the next part of the story. Noah builds the ark based on God's specifications. 8 people safely board the ark with all the representative species of animals. The rains pour forth over a period of 40 days and 40 nights. But Noah, his family, and the stinking animals spend more than a year riding out the stormy waters. I would venture to say that after this period, Noah and his family were not wanting to wander too far from the ark, even though they were probably sick of the ark, just as many of us over the past year are getting a little tired of seeing the walls of our own homes. For even after the greatest of the rains, there were still stormy clouds lingering in the sky. Now, dear friends, have you ever noticed how a rainbow arises? The sun suddenly breaks through the clouds with brilliance, even though the elements are still raging. And then you notice a strange thing. A light never celebrates such a display of color as when it breaks forth into the spectrum. Roy G. Biv. Red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, and violet. The festival of joy takes place at the very moment when the rays of the sun still clash with the lingering storms and threatening rains. We understand what is implied in this image for Noah and company, and for us. It is precisely in grief and pain, in the depths, and under the uncertainty of the lingering aftermath of storms that God displays the fullness of God's grace. God's powerful promise breaks through to us. I establish my covenant with you, that never again shall all flesh be cut off by the waters of a flood, and never again shall there be a flood to destroy the earth. I have set my bow in the clouds, and it shall be a sign of the covenant between me and the whole earth. Do you comprehend this, sisters and brothers? Promise breaks through amid the storm clouds. Have you ever detected God's consoling presence so clearly as when you were delivered up to the most terrible or lingering distress, where no shelter or false human promises could save you? The Lamb of God's promise always seems to come to us most clearly amid the lion of distress. The bow always shines with peacock color in times when the contrasting storm clouds linger. It is in the depths that God's hand is stretched out with the greatest love of all. On this first Sunday in Lent, the rainbow comes to us as a sign that a new world breaks through upon us with a second chance. We are no longer to be slaves to our past and to our guilt and shame. God's promise sheds burning, beautiful, and brilliant light upon the whole creation, everything and everybody. How's that for ecological implications of the promise? God's only Son, Jesus Christ, has taken the stormy past upon himself and taken it away. We stand in the new ark, the church, with a new beginning, a fresh chance. We can begin again. Storms continue to linger visibly and invisibly. A slipping economy squeezes us in anxiety. The fog of war against a pesky pandemic clouds our vision. But God's future already breaks through upon us like a rainbow in the storm. And we are free to live boldly and securely in God's blessed covenant with the whole creation. We are free to live by forgiveness. The rainbow indicates the dawning of a new day. The Lamb of God who takes away the sin of the world breaks through to us in mercy and hope. even as the lion of late winter storms and wind linger around us. Thanks be to God.